Apologies in advance if this video is like choppy at all. We're getting the kitchen redone and they keep on using, not a chainsaw, loud equipment basically, which you can hear because you can just hear everything in my house from any room you're in. So today's video is another episode of my glute series that I have been doing, and today's video is probably like the second most common thing I get asked about next to volume, which is frequency. So that is what this video is going to be all about. So if you want to learn some more about that, then carry on watching the video. When I look down in these videos, it's because I've got notes written down on my iPad because I like to actually put effort into these videos and plan them out. Shock horror. Oh my god. So frequency is just the number of times you would train a muscle group per week. So in terms of my glute series, that is going to be how many times should you train your glutes a week. Frequency is something that has cropped up in pretty much most of the videos that I've done in this glute series, just because a lot of training variables. I think Brett Contreras puts this really well, and he has like a hexagon like spider diagram thing. Like everything, all the variables are basically intertwined and things are like dependent on each other. I hope all these videos are actually making sense and tying in nicely together, but I do get asked a lot on Instagram, how many times should I train my glutes a week? I can only train my glutes twice a week, is that enough? I can only train them once a week, can I train them every single day? So I just thought I'd sit down and do an entire video on frequency. So like I've just said, frequency is the number of times you are training your glutes per week. Something that you need to consider when you're looking at training frequency is also the recovery, because realistically you can't train a muscle group hard, intensely, properly every single day, because you need to factor in your recovery. The general recommendation for how long should you leave it before training the same muscle group again is 48 hours. So basically every other day you could train the same muscle. So a variable that is going to be very interlinked and very closely intertwined with your frequency is going to be your training volume. Now studies have been done on this, looking at volume and looking at frequency, playing around with the two and seeing what happens. So basically, let's say you're doing a study and group 1 is doing 20 sets a week and group 2 is also doing 20 sets a week on the muscle group. So in this example, your glute. So 20 sets a week, but group 1 might be doing those 20 sets over 3 training sessions. Group 2 might do them over 2 training sessions. So the volume is equated, but the frequencies are different. Studies that have done that actually found that when volume is equated, so 20 sets between both groups, frequency did not make a significant difference when it came to muscle growth. However, when the volume is not equated, higher frequency won in terms of the muscle growth results that they saw, the hypertrophy results that they saw. So what we can take away from this is that when you are considering frequency, you need to consider that in terms of how much volume you are doing per week. And annoyingly, that's going to be different for probably most people, because what you're going to want to do with your frequency is use that as a tool to handle your volume. Now, if you are doing higher volume, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say volume, because I'm going to say the word volume probably a lot in this video, go and check out my last glute series episode that I did, which was all about volume, and that pretty much will explain everything that you need to know. But yeah, if you are training with a higher volume, then training with a higher frequency is going to be much more helpful in helping you to manage the volume that you are doing. So for example, if you are doing 20 to 30 sets on your glutes per week, you wouldn't want to try and do that in one session, because the chances are if you're doing 20 to 30 sets in a session, you are not going to have enough energy to give everything that you can to each move that you're doing. By the end of your session, you probably won't be working at the intensity that you need to be working at because you are just so tired. And this is where frequency comes in, because you can split that volume up across the week to make sure that you can give your training the intensity that it needs. But obviously if you're training with a much lower volume, let's say you're doing 10 sets per week, you could do that in one session and that would be absolutely fine. There would be no real need for you to split that across the week. Typically speaking, if you are training with that slightly higher volume, training your glutes 2 to 3 times a week is going to be a better way of helping you manage that. So how many times should you actually be training your glutes a week? Well, it's going to depend on some other things, but Brett Contreras' general guideline is 2 days a week is a lot better than 1 day a week, and 3 days a week is marginally better than 2 times a week. But if you can do that 3rd day a week, then why wouldn't you want to do it if you are seriously trying to grow some muscle? But as with all things to do with training, which is why I find training just so interesting, it ultimately boils down to the individual. Some people can see amazing results with the training frequency of 1 glute session a week. Some people need to train them 3 times a week to see the results that they want to see from their body and from their glute growth. So I hate to be that person, but frequency is going to be something that you are going to have to experiment with. I know that's really annoying, but just like volume and other training variables, it really does boil down to the individual, and it also boils down to your schedule. Obviously, if you only have physically got time to train your glutes once a week, that's far better than training them 0 times a week. So don't ever feel like, oh well, I can't do 3 times a week, so what's the point? Because something is always going to be better than absolutely nothing. Now technically there is some glute work like band work, super lightweight bridges, bodyweight hip thrusts, which won't cause a lot of muscle damage, and actually you could probably get away with doing those multiple days a week. I'm talking more than 3 times a week, like 6 days a week. But is that the most effective way to train to grow your glutes? No, not really, and I wouldn't recommend that anyone does that personally. Neither would Brett Contreras. He speaks about this in his Glute Lab book, and he says technically you could train your glutes 6 times a week if you wanted to, doing the things that I've just mentioned, the band work, the things that won't cause a lot of muscle damage and soreness. But it is essentially junk volume. It's not really going to be eliciting much growth, and realistically, does anyone actually want to train their glutes 6 times a week? Like, I love training glutes, but like 6 times a week seems very excessive to me, especially if I'm not doing the things that I love, which are like the heavier compounds, heavy hip thrusts, lunges, squats, leg press, stuff like that. There's no way that you can do that for 6 sessions a week and get away with it and not run into injuries and be recovering properly. Like, unless you're Superwoman, I just don't see that happening. Now, there are other factors that you do need to consider when it comes to your training frequency. So like I spoke about before, volume is something that is heavily tied into frequency, and you basically want to use your frequency to manage your volume and make sure that you are giving the most that you possibly can to your sets. So let's say you have 3 days a week where you could train glutes, but currently you're training 2 days a week and you're trying to cram loads into those 2 sessions, and by halfway through the session you are half-assing the exercises, you're not pushing yourself anywhere near close to failure, and you're just not training as hard as you really should be. You might then think, actually a smarter way to do this would be to split my volume up, not across 2 sessions but across 3, and try that out so you can really give the most to your sessions and to every single movement that you're doing. And also things like load, the effort that you are putting into your training, and also the exercises that you are doing will also impact the frequency that you can get away with. For example, if there are a lot of heavy squats, lunges, things that work your glutes in a stretch position in your program, your frequency will probably need to be lower, because typically they cause more muscle damage than movements that work your glutes in a shortened position. So things like hip thrusts, bridges, things like that. You can get away with doing those more frequently than you can things like squats and lunges, just because they tend to make you that little bit more sore. But to round up the video and answer the question that you probably wanted me to answer in this video, and why you've probably watched it, is how many times should you train your glutes per week? 1, it's going to depend on your volume. 2, it's going to depend on you as an individual and your schedule. But for me, I would say 3 times a week if you can, 2 times a week if 3 times a week is pushing it, and if you can only train them 1 time a week, that is absolutely fine, and something is going to be better than nothing. But if you are looking to get really maximal results, I would say 2 to 3 times a week, depending on the kind of volume that you're doing, is more than enough frequency. like I mentioned, you can technically do these band circuits and stuff like that every single day if you really want to, but it's not necessary. You don't need to do it. If you enjoy doing them and it makes your day and you want to do it every day, then go ahead and do it, but it's not something that you need to do. It's not something that's necessary. Honestly, I would only say to do that if you just enjoy doing it and get like a kick out of it or whatever, and it makes your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning. If that's what you want to do it, but it's not necessary for glute growth. Realistically, 2 to 3 times a week and you will be absolutely fine and well on your way to making some progress. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, then please give it a thumbs up because it's really helpful. Subscribe if you want to and you haven't already, and any questions about anything that I've spoken about, please just comment them down below and I will get back to you, or message me on Instagram because I do try my very best to get back to all my messages on there. I do eventually respond to everyone. It can just take me a while, especially I'm starting uni again on Monday, so we've got a busy week. But yeah, any other videos that you want to see in this series or videos in general, let me know. And yeah, thank you for watching.